Well, welcome to season 2 of Give 'em the Business. I am your host, Troy Evans, and I am here with the titan of business, Dr. William Pickard. How are you doing today, sir?
It's a great day, young fella, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, I am very excited to talk to you today for numerous reasons. One of the numerous reasons is all of the synergies that I feel that I have to you. And you are probably unaware of this, but to give you an understanding, and some of this I knew about you, some of this I learned from your book, Millionaire Moves. But I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, going to the church of Reverend Otis Moss, who put me under the water. And when I grew up listening to stories about Troup County, Georgia, right? And so when I learned that you were from Troup County, I said, well, that has to be a good man. And then on top of that, you living in Cleveland, and I read the foreword of the book, and George Frazier, who I went to school with his son, Kyle. Is writing the forward for your book. And then you're also in the casino business, and I worked in that for a while. And I've said, well, there's so much synergy here. I've got to get this titan on the show to tell me all his secrets of success. So thank you for joining.
Well, I'm glad to be here. But more importantly, those examples tell you that God is able to put you where you need to be.
Without a doubt. Definitely. So let's dive in. I read your book recently, and one, I want to thank you for writing it, because as steeped as I am in entrepreneurship and as much motivation and drive that I have, I found a renewed sense of energy in reading it. And so, glad that you put pen to paper and brought your wisdom to the table. I want to talk about some of that wisdom today. But before we dive into some of the lessons you've learned, I'd like to learn a little bit more about maybe, where you think your foundation stemmed from, if they're coming from LaGrange, or if it, happened after you moved to Flint or what have you. Tell me about growing up and those lessons you learned early on in life.
Yeah, well, that's ironically, all of us have these lessons, life lessons. And just last Saturday, I was doing a program with some students, and these are high school students in Detroit, and we're doing Zoom. And what the first question was, tell us about your growing up, which is a good question. Mm-hmm. Well, the irony of life, God is so special, because I lived in LaGrange. I was born in LaGrange, lived in LaGrange until I was in the 10th grade. So that would probably be 15, 14, 16. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to up south. So I was down south in LaGrange. Then we moved up south to Flint.
Up south, I like that.
And let me tell you something. Down south was good.
Okay.
LaGrange was great. My family owned businesses. My granddaddy was a titan in the town. He was about 5'4", called himself a colored Republican merchant.
Okay.
Now, this is 1950s, And he owned the local baseball team. He owned a garage. And he had a little side hustle called bootleg. So, we were living large.
Okay.
Lived in Harlem Circle. Our neighbors were school teachers. So, man, life is good.
Right.
I'm going to go to Morehouse and just tell you what God does. When I graduated from the 8th grade at Thomastown Elementary School in LaGrange, Georgia, we had a commencement speaker. They bring back to LaGrange a senior student at Morehouse named Otis Moss to give us the commencement address. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm probably, 15? You're sitting there, you probably got your Sunday suit on. And this man said something I have never forgotten. Otis Moss says, success without service is worse than a thief in the night. Mm-hmm. So if you become successful, and if you don't service the people, the community, and the God that help you become successful, you're worse than a thief. I have never, ever forgotten that one.
Well, he is known for dropping some jewels. I I like to think that I pull good information and role model examples from various people that I interact with. But growing up, he was one of my role models that I really looked up to and really admired. When I went, so I was going to a predominantly black suburb school in Warrensville Heights, Ohio, which I'm sure you're familiar with. And my mother got married, and we ended up going to Orange High School, one of the most, wealthy public school districts in the state of Ohio. And for Black History Month, I had Reverend Moss come out and speak to the class, and I was just amazed at the way he commanded that audience of young high school students and whatnot. He's always
it's a gift.
Gems. Yes,
it's a gift.
Yes, you said he mentioned what is required in terms of service. One of the quotes you had in the book, which I really liked, by Mary Wright Edelman, is service is the price we pay for being. Right, the rent we pay. Mm-hmm. That is that's a very interesting quote that I believe in as well. Yeah. So you've definitely done a lot of that. So you clearly had entrepreneurship examples when you were in LaGrange. Yeah. One of the things you mentioned and you were fond of was your uncle, who was in the numbers business. And I feel synergies there too, because my family was in the number business when I was growing up. And in the background, I always heard 304 box for 50 cents and things of that nature. Right? But you learned a lot from being able to witness your grandfather and then your uncle. They all had major influence on you. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Major. I tell you, well, one of my things I love to tell people about is two-arm living. Now, everyone can't come out and create a business going to do 400, 500, $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So my grandfather was a big disciple of two-arm living. You're 18 years old, you're 17. What is the man talking about? Two-arm living. Well, I had an uncle who was a shop teacher. He taught shop in school. He said, "You ain't gonna never make no money doing that. Why don't you get out and hustle? Why don't you get out and repair stuff, fix people's houses?" And so I'm listening now. I'm 16, I think it was. So I'm listening. He said, for an example, half of these women around here, they can't even put a screen door in. Go by there and put the screen door in for them. And you make a little money on the side. You got a job and you got to hustle. Mm-hmm. Now, his hustles were not illegal hustles, right. But that concept stayed with me forever. And I thought when I first started out that I would get a PhD and I'd have a little barbecue stand or a record shop on the side. And I had been exposed to Cleveland, those shoulder sandwiches, in Cleveland. Right. So I just knew I was going to get a PhD. And then I'm gonna have a little side business. I'm set. That's where I thought I was going at one point.
And that's interesting because one of the things that is also very interesting to me about you is the fact that you had that PhD, right? You started off down an education path. Social work was where you thought you were going to be. And you don't see a lot of people make the pivot from that academic life to be such a successful entrepreneur. And beyond that, you had your focus on Black causes, which I also admire, which is why I have this podcast. But, you were working with the NAACP in Cleveland, going down the academic route, and then you made the shift. How did that occur?
Arnold R. Pinckney,
who I worked on his campaign to help the Cleveland School Board pass a levy. Yeah. He was at Olivet, and I met Arnold through the family there.
Well, that man, I mean, you hear about and you talk about life, and you talk about going to a city when you're 20. I was 25 years of age. I hit Cleveland, and Carl Stokes was running for mayor. Mm-hmm. Arnold's in the mix, and I had a youth group called the Urban League Youth Community, and I had. Oh my gosh, she passed away. Stephanie Tubbs Jones was in my group. She was an 18-year-old kid then. I had all these 18, 19-year-old kids from Cass Tech and East Tech and Kennedy, and we could turn the places out, because it's excitement of young people. So one day Mr. Pinckney comes and said, "Hey man," says, "why don't you bring your youth community to the rallies?" Stokes. I said, "Mr. Pinckney," I said, "Urban League is not in politics, I I don't think we can do that. He said, you take care of the kids, I'll take care of the politics.
Okay.
We became known at night, Young Folks for Stokes.
Okay.
Leonard Tate, we would turn those rallies out, man.
Right.
And so that got me into the politics. So then Carl wins. He becomes mayor. So Pinckney comes to me and says, hey, now I'm 26 years old. What do I know? He said, listen, you got something special. He said, you want to go to City Hall and work for the mayor? I said, no, sir. I don't want to do that. He said, what do you think you want to do? I said, I don't know. I think eventually I want to get a little business and keep doing what I'm doing. But no, I don't want to do that. He said, okay. This is the God's truth. He called me 2 weeks later and says there's a job open for the NAACP executive in Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And I think you should apply. Man, I'm 27 years old.
Right.
What do I know? What do I know? I applied. The search committee chair was Charles Perry.
Who I know also.
That was his business partner, his Pinckney Perry Insurance.
Right.
I got the job.
Right.
And man, I hit the town at the right time. Stokes is mayor. Black folks are strong. And the NAACP and the civil rights movement is moving. And then along come McDonald's boycott.
Right. Right. So, Carl Stokes, first black mayor of a major city in the United States. Mm-hmm. And then you mentioned the kind of the timing of that, which I found to be interesting because I've talked to a lot of successful black professionals who made it through corporate America and whatnot. And that timing of the 70s was very critical to that success. And you mentioned it in your book too. But, I don't know that those opportunities would exist today to get in ground floor McDonald's franchises and things of that nature, but it existed then. Talk to me about the importance of timing. Yeah,
timing. I always say this, and this bothers me a little bit. When I hit the late 60s and the early 70s, black people who were comfortable, middle class, lawyers, doctors, judges, they were pushing to open doors in business for black people. They were pushing General Motors in Detroit to bring on black dealerships. Then they were pushing Ford Motor Company to put blacks as suppliers. And then they were encouraging McDonald's to give black franchises. Nobody realized that was not a black person in America in 1969 that had a McDonald's franchise. Mm-hmm. Until Rabbi Hill did his thing in Cleveland. So that period of time was what I call a magic moment. And what I worry about, my generation hasn't been as activists and keep pushing those doors and opening those doors. Mm-hmm. But I think we have been activists in helping people see the vision and create the possibilities. I mean, now you can see black companies that are doing $1 and $2 and $3 billion, You can now see people like Robert Smith who are doing it. So I believe beyond a shadow of a doubt that the times have changed, but we still have that activism, but it's just not collectively and it's not as visible.
The McDonald's was another example of synergies that I felt to you because I went to school not only with Kyle, George Frazier's son, but I went with Caesar Burke's daughter. And then I also was doing business with Leon Goodrum when I first got to Morehouse. And then in recent years with Harold Lewis out in Las Vegas. And so, I feel like there's a special connection actually between black entrepreneurs trying to get their start at McDonald's. Mm-hmm. There seemed to be a willingness to embrace opportunities with black entrepreneurships in that franchise. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, you have to say, in spite of all of the things that McDonald has done wrong and they continue to do some things that are not good, you got to give them credit. They were the Branch Rickey of business for black people. Mm-hmm. Branch Rickey was the owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers that hired Jackie Robinson. McDonald's did put the first black in business in Chicago in October of 1969, Herman Petty. Mm-hmm. And once he got in, then they began to bring others in. And I was in the top 10, but I wound up in Detroit. And so there were a lot of good things that happened then. There were some bad things that happened because oftentimes our restaurants were in the highest crime areas and all that. But again, it was a start.
Right.
It was an opportunity. You had to survive and you had to create ways to be successful. But we cannot take away from McDonald's that they did make that giant step of permitting the first group of blacks into real franchise opportunities in America.
And then they also, I remember when I was at Morehouse, they commissioned that study that was something to the effect of they could place black actors and actresses in their commercials, and it wouldn't have a detrimental effect on sales. And so they were one of the first organizations and companies that really started having black people in their commercials.
Yep. Burrell advertised.
Right.
And Burrell has retired, but his business lives on, and they are still doing a lot of McDonald's commercials. As a matter of fact, I would argue that the best commercials that McDonald's has ever had, black or white, were done by Burrell. They were just awesome, and they were the first.
And then they had a black CEO a while back too as well. So they've done some things, and I noticed it come up in a lot of the business conversations that I've had. So,
but they're being sued today by several black owners.
Well, they can't get it all right. And so you have the opportunity to leap into action on this McDonald's franchise. Not a lot of people that look like you are doing it, and you have to find and come up with the money in order to take advantage of it. And one of the things that I've struggled with, that I know a lot of black business people have struggled with, that you say in your book should not be an obstacle, is the finance option.
Yeah.
And I've heard, and people who are well off like yourself and have had success say similar things. I remember Ken Chenault said, if money is your only problem, you don't have one. Right. And you kind of echoed the same sentiment.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the fact that you overcame what some people would be fearful of to borrow that money.
Yeah.
And then how would you encourage other people to pursue finance options?
Well, I say everything is financeable. Some loans you can get for 3%, some you can get for 2%, some you can get for 40%,
right?
Some 30%. And obviously there's some money you don't want. You know,
right.
I'm not going to talk about street money. But, you know, man, you look back on your life, you say, now, here I am. And I know I was at Ohio State. And McDonald's said, we want to do business with you three guys. There was three of us. And we had to have $25,000. Now, this is 1970. I'm at Ohio State trying to get a PhD, living on High Street, working at McDonald's.
Right.
And zero money. You know, I'm a student, you know. And, man, one of my fraternity brothers named Raymond Snow, I knew he saved every penny he had. So obviously we needed 8,000. That's 24. I knew Ray had his 8. I met another guy in Cleveland named Mel Garrett who worked at the May Company, and I thought he had his 8. I knew I didn't have my 8.
Right. And
this is what God does, man. So one Sunday, I live on High Street right by Lane, and I decided to go to the Alpha fraternity meeting, Kappa chapter in the old student union. And I go over there. And I've been a couple of times before, but now I'm going, and it's a little different. I got to make a hookup here because I got to borrow some money. And so I eventually say to one of the guys, hey, man, anybody in the frat works for student financial aid? He said, yeah, Brother John Hall. Yeah, John Hall works over there. He's getting his doctorate. He works in student aid. I go over at the meeting, talk to him, tell him, I said, man, I don't tell the truth. I need to borrow some money to finish up my program. He said, what do you need? I said, $10,000. He said, you got any debt? I said, no, sir. He said, meet me in my office on Tuesday. I go over there on Lane, right in front of the Arps Hall, and this man loaned me $10,000.
On the spot.
$10,000. Now, I must admit, if he had done that 4 years earlier, I'd have brought me a nice Cadillac convertible, you know. But at that moment, I knew that was my ticket to McDonald's. Right. Now, you say, well, Pickard, how did you know that, man? God has a way of telling you what to do. And I believe this, though. If I had not gotten it there, I would have gotten it somewhere. And I probably would have borrowed it from somebody and would have had to pay it back, and therefore would have had to probably wind up giving them a percentage of my business to get the loan. But I really believe, man, that when these opportunities show up, that if you can talk to people, if you can interact with people who've been down this road, there are lots of ways that we can help you find that money. One of the secrets I learned this in Cleveland from Jim Haynes and Rita Haynes at the Mount Sinai Credit Union. These people sit up in the Lancers every day driving them new Cadillacs and got on $500 worth of clothes. They ain't got no money saved up. But you find them people at Mount Sinai Baptist Church who work in the post office. Mm-hmm. They've been saving money for years working at the post office. Them teachers who are now counselors and principals, they've been saving money for years. If you can tap into that equity fund, you can get some money. But them brothers in Lancers, they ain't got no cash.
Right.
It's all show, no dough.
Right.
You know, I still believe that. You got to fake it till you make it. It's all show.
Right. And so did you have any fear that you had to overcome when you were getting ready to make that first leap? Or did you have the faith that you talk about in your book from day one?
And I had been through Cleveland. Mm-hmm. I had been through the riots of Huff.
Okay.
I was out in the street at night. You know, we got Carl Stokes to pull the white policeman out, and the black community went in. Now here I am, 27 years old, don't own nothing. I'm out here in Huff telling brothers and sisters, be cool, blah, 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 blah. I don't own a house. I don't own a car. I ain't got no money. What am I doing out here? But that was a commitment.
Right.
It was a cause. So when you go through that, man, you don't feel very much. And when I got to Ohio State, it was like, whew, I can relax.
Right.
Think about this. You're 27 years of age. You're running the NAACP. You got to raise money for payroll. You got to pay the bills. You got to pay the employees. And then you got to fight for civil rights. Mm-hmm. At the Urban League, you don't have to raise no money. United Way just gave you the check every week. In my case, many a day, I would be told, Mr. Pickard, today is Wednesday. Payroll is Friday. We have no money. Okay, I'll go to Mr. Wendell Irwin's office. He was at 105 Superior. He was a president of the branch. He was an insurance man. I go over there, wait for him. He didn't drive. Insurance man didn't drive. I put him in my car. We drive up to East Boulevard. He go up the hill steps, come back, drive down the street here. He runs there, come on. He come. I'm like, what the hell's he doing? No, what's going on, huh? Then he said, take me to the Cleveland Trust night deposit box at 105th and Euclid. Then he put deposit in. I later learned what he was doing. The number men were giving him the money to keep the NAACP alive. Mm-hmm. Jesus Christ.
Right.
I had no idea. So when you go through that, man, and you finally realize what's going on, you say, hey, this community has strength. We can find a way to help each other. We can find a way to coalesce. Because I would have never thought, man, that Reggie White and all those guys and Mr. C. Wright and all those people, I would have never thought they were helping out with the NAA, but they were. So when you leave that, at least when I left that, I had a new sense of entitlement. I had a new sense of belief about what we could do as a people. And I felt better about Bill Pickard.
Right. Yeah. As you say, the number business financed many of legitimate opportunity in the neighborhood.
Legitimate.
Right. Right. So now you've got the McDonald's franchise. It's going well. And you decide you want more McDonald's franchises.
Yeah, I called myself the pop-up Negro. I had a PhD. I was lecturing all over the country for McDonald's on how to treat people. And I just knew I was it. Whenever they needed a Negro to pop up, I raised my hand, I popped up, you know.
Right.
And they built a restaurant, a brand new restaurant, right near where I live. I lived in an area that was about like Shaker Heights, you know, one of the few blacks out there in an apartment, and they was going to put that restaurant. I knew the pop-up Negro had it.
Right.
Pop-up Negro didn't get it. I said, okay. You made your decision. Now I'm going to make mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I started looking at other opportunities. At that time, I had 5 restaurants. I eventually had 9. But by that time, I was in automotive, newspapers, casinos, you name it,
Mm-hmm.
because I pivoted.
Right.
I didn't get mad at McDonald's and curse them out. I got mad at McDonald's and made my own plan.
Right.
And I don't know why I didn't do what a lot of people did in that era of blacks. They get mad with McDonald's and go out and start a little Bill's sandwich shop. I didn't do none of that. This is a good thing, but I'm going to pivot and get into something else. And God, I mean, what is the possibility of me with a PhD going to walk into Ford Motor Company and tell them I want to be a supplier?
Right. Right.
And somebody says, let's try it.
Right. Now, before you made the pivot, did your partners, were they still with you on the additional McDonald's, or did you go solo?
No. What happened, God stepped in again. One guy was Dr. Raymond Snowden. He was my closest friend in the world. We had gone to Western together, and he was a social worker. He had gotten his PhD much like I had. And, we worked in the business, and he died of a heart attack. Mm. And when he died, again, I have no brothers or sisters. This guy was like everything to me. And I'm now saying, can I do this? Because Ray took care of all the books. He was a finance guy. I was a people guy. And the other guy was an operations guy. And the other guy, I love him, but he couldn't lead a parade down a hill. Mm. So I remember, man, vividly, I took a long drive, about 5 hours, just trying to ask myself, can I do this financial thing? Can I keep this thing going? And McDonald's helped me make a decision, because they called us in and said, look, you get 2 restaurants. They gave his wife, the one that passed, 2 restaurants, and they gave Garrett 2 restaurants. So my problem is solved, because now I only have 2 restaurants to worry about. And I know I can handle these 2. And then I started building all over again.
Okay. And so you said you made a plan to pivot based on the circumstances that arose. And that's when you got into the automotive supplier business. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I find interesting, I'd like to learn more about your thoughts on it before we get into that story, is you've chosen the route of either a franchise or acquiring a business that already existed, mm-hmm. as opposed to starting one from scratch. Talk to me about the advantages and disadvantages of that.
Well, without a doubt, I believe that franchising is for people like me, not very smart, low IQ, and can do what they're told. Okay. One of my friends said, Pickard, you're not very bright, man. Franchise is painting by the numbers.
Right.
Painting by the numbers. 1, put in yellow. 2, you put in blue. 3, you put in red. It's really painting by the numbers. And I mastered that one. I don't think I would have been successful starting something from scratch. Mm-hmm. But now I learned the business I acquired in automotive was in bankruptcy. But the bones were there. But the management was not. Mm-hmm. And I was able to bring in some new management. Like, I remember this vividly. So we cut this deal on a Friday. It's raining. And the guy says, anything else you want to talk about, Bill? I said, yeah. I said, I need the president of the company. He said, whew, I was worried about you, because if you thought you were going to, he said, I got 3 people for you. And he brought me a guy named John Tobacek. And Tobacek and I went to work. He took care of the inside. I took care of the outside. I had to go grow the business, get the money, find the people, and grow. And we did it unbelievably well.
And you acquired 51% of that. Was Regal
mm-hmm.
Plastics.
Mm-hmm. Regal Plastics. Mm-hmm.
And so that does well, starts to grow. And then you have the foresight to say, well, let me look for some other additional auto suppliers that, mm-hmm. that can be merged into this mm-hmm. opportunity. Talk to me about your thoughts there.
Well, sometimes it's just God. It's just God. I get a call one day from a person who said, we've been watching you and we think that we got an opportunity for you. And I said, well, I don't have any money. He said, well, we can fix that. And again, I was able to buy another company and did very well. So now I am twice the size I was when I walked in the door. Mm-hmm. And my customers are celebrating. I'm celebrating. I was in U.S. News and World Report. This bad young man that brought the McDonald magic touch to automotive supply. They doubled my business. Mm-hmm. I didn't have the capital. I didn't have the people. I didn't have the processes. And I sure didn't have the intelligence. And I damn near crashed. I went all the way to the bottom. But again, God showed up. Because I told you, when I bought the company, it was in bankruptcy. And I told the men that were losing all their money, if you give me a chance, I'm going to pay you every dollar we owe you, but you got to give me 4 years to pay you back. So they said, well, right now we ain't going to get nothing. In 4 years, maybe we'll get something. Second year, we've hit a home run. My guys come to me and say, hey, Pick, listen, all those guys have written off this debt. We got enough money today to pay them off. Just give them 50 cents on the dollar, man. And we got 50 cents to the good. We turned this puppy around. So let me think about it. So I called a gentleman who became my mentor, Mr. John Sayed. He was the CFO of Ford. CFO. Mm-hmm. Now here I'm a little supplier with a company doing 40 or 50 million. I called him up because I had met him through Albion College, because I always would go lecture at different colleges. And he was up there one time at Albion. He went to Albion. And so I went to have lunch with him. And I was telling him about it, da-da-da-da-da. And lunch is almost over. I said, but Mr. Sagan, you didn't tell me what to do. He said, tell you what to do? I can't tell you what to do. He said, what did you tell the people that loan you the money? I told him I would pay them back. He said, think about it.
Right.
2 years later, I paid him back. Dollar for dollar. I didn't shortchange him. I didn't cram him. I gave him dollar for dollar, like I had said. So now, it's about 5 years later, I'm back in the soup again. I mean, deep in the soup this time. And it's the same people that you owe. And man, they call me out. We call it a creditors meeting. And I'm the only black guy there, man. It's rough. And they beat me to death. So finally one guy said, listen, this guy walked in here 5 years ago. Everybody in here, including me, had lost money. He told us he's going to pay us back. Every one of you never thought you'd see your money, but he paid you back. Now you out here again. He owe you money again. And if you tell him to go to hell, you're going to lose your money. If you give him another chance, I think he'll pay you back. And I'm willing to vote right now to give him a chance. They gave me the second chance.
and that guy who stood up for you was kind of orchestrated.
He was a plant.
Right? That was a smart business.
Yeah, well, my accountant did that. I didn't know. Yeah, because I'm new at this game, but I now know the drill.
Right.
I now know the drill.
Right.
But luckily for me, my guys knew how to handle it. They had the right people in place at the right time, and we fixed it.
And you talk about that in your book too, because that was one of the times that you said was the most, the closest you came to failure.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about having to have resilience as an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. What allowed you to get up every morning and tackle those problems?
Boy, I tell you, I have a friend named Donald Snyder, and my friends knew I was going through something. I mean, I'm not bashful about it. I said, guys, I need help. This is rough. Snyder would call me every morning. Piccadilly, When you wake up, you got to get up. Get out of that bed. Get out of that bed and get back out here in the game. And I'm going to tell you, he's a crazy guy, but that was what helped me, you know. And my lady friend at that time, who became my wife, now my ex-wife and my best friend, said, listen, I work for General Motors. They've had problems. Ford has had problems. Chrysler had problems. Everybody has problems. Just get up and get out there and fix it. I needed that.
Right.
I needed that because, boy, I was down, you know. Right. And I now tell people all the time, failure is never fatal. Failure will not kill you. It's not fatal. Failure is never fatal, and success is never final. We know people every day became very successful. Mm-hmm. 10 years later, they dead broke.
Right.
NBA. 5 years later, they all dead broke. But failure is what I love to say is like Denzel Washington. If you get knocked down 9 times, you got to get up 10 times. And you got to keep getting up. Because if you don't get up, the game can be over.
Right.
But I try to tell people all the time, I failed at college, math and science, but I just kept going. I changed my majors. I couldn't pass the chemistry, so I changed the social work. Right. Come on now.
Right.
There's a way. There's a way.
Right. And so now, did you still have the McDonald's franchises while you were?
Well, sure, still do. To this day.
So you were a very hands-on, keep your eye on the operations and whatnot. What allowed you or enabled you to still maintain that level of confidence in your business without too much shrinkage, as you say, while you were off doing this new endeavor?
Well, you know, I did something that I still do because I believe in it. I share the blessings. When I created Automotive, I gave that guy ownership. They had ownership. Mm-hmm. McDonald's were very liberal. The people that worked for me at McDonald's, they knew me. One lady had been with me 40 years. They knew me. Unfortunately, I was single, and I would go by my McDonald's at least once or twice a week. You got to see, Doc, I'm coming. Sometime I'm coming through the drive-thru. Sometime I'm coming in the front. And I'm spending my own money. I ain't using no gift certificates. Spend your own money. I consciously wanted people to see me there and to see me involved in my business. But the Automotive, I gave up equity and brought in good people that could help keep that in the road. Because my job there was primarily marketing and sales and trying to get the relationship with the customers. Mm-hmm. I say there are 3 aspects of this business, any business. Simple. There's a finder, there's a minder, and there's a grinder. Mm-hmm. The finder got to go out and find this business. I got to go to Ford, Toyota, General Motors, Honda. I got to find it. Then I got to put it over the fence and give it to my grinder, the engineers, the process people, the technology people. Then they got to put it all together and give it to Pookie, who's a grinder. You got to hope he shows up on Monday morning. Mm-hmm. So the finder, minder, grinder.
Right. And so while this is going on, you've mentioned a couple of times the young lady who would eventually become your wife and is now your best friend. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about the complexities of managing a relationship while trying to get a business off the ground.
I didn't do well in that area of my life. I'm an only child. I probably focused a little bit more on business than I should have. I probably missed some good relationships, some great relationships. But, you know, you have to make a decision. I wouldn't suggest I have a daughter who's 28 now, and I try to tell her, Mary, you're a great lawyer, but, you know, you don't want to wind up like your dad. You know, I don't have a significant person in my life right now. And I believe very strongly, though, the bad news is, man, I would do what I did over again. Mm. I was driven not so much by money, but someone asked me at Georgia State, I was with Cassius Butts, and a young white girl raised her hand. She said, well, now you all this and all of that, but when you first started out, when you first started out, what was your goal? And man, it almost brought tears in my eyes. Because my first goal was to get my mama a house. Mm. And I bought my mama 3 houses before I had 1 house. 3. And now, she would have said to me, boy, it doesn't take all this. Take some time and develop a relationship. I want grandkids and all that. But I was focused on, and it wasn't the money, but I knew that was a magic moment. I knew that these opportunities were not going to last forever, and they did not. Mm-hmm. A lot of them are gone. A lot of them are gone. I was at the Vanguard, and Detroit was different than Cleveland, and Cleveland was different than Atlanta, and Atlanta was different than Charlotte. I would say Detroit might have been the number 1 city for black business people between 1980 and the year 2000. If you don't believe it, go get Black Enterprise and look at the top 100 companies. 20 of those for years were from Detroit because automotive is so big. Mm-hmm. But then automotive changed. You know, we had a tremendous shift in automotive. They don't want to buy this little widget from one company anymore. They want you to bring a number of parts to the party. And then you had to shift. I had to sell a company, as an example. 4 years ago, sold my biggest company. But I got paid, and everything was okay. Right. So there's a magic moment, though, and you have to seize it. And I might have spent too much time on it, but that's okay. I'm good. Okay. I'm good.
And so you also maintained a positive relationship with your ex-wife. And talk to me about how you're able to do that, because a lot of people can't do that.
Well, I'm not so sure how you do that. But my ex-wife worked at General Motors. And this girl walked into General Motors when she was 18 from Mississippi. And when she walked out, she was president and CEO of the General Motors Foundation. That's a journey, brother. Mm-hmm. And out of that, she, I think, acquired a lot of relationships around the country. And everybody knew her, nobody knew me, you know. And she happens to be a nice person. She didn't remarry, I didn't remarry. And I think most importantly, I moved too fast when I got a divorce. I was just, my mother had become ill, and I literally bought my mother another condo and put an apartment in the basement where I was going to stay because I wasn't going to leave my mom. Now, that eventually changed a lot. You know, other people helped me out. But I don't have any regrets. I am where I am, and I have to make the best of today and tomorrow. But I know one thing. I honored my responsibility to my family and to people that I care about and people that care about me. I did what I had to do. In other words, I believe in life it's like a relay. You have so many miles or distance to run, and then someone else runs it. Well, in my life and my family, God gave me this opportunity. And I took that baton, brother man, and I've gone up the hill. Now my daughter and my people in my business got to take this baton and they got to run their leg because I did my leg. And my mother lived long enough to see what I built. She saw it, mm-hmm. and she benefited from it. And my daddy saw some of it. Now, he didn't see as much as my mom did, but my mom saw the stuff and the whistles and the houses and the cars and the stuff. And so I don't have any regrets, but I would just say to the next generation, smell the roses. Take some time for relationships. They matter. They matter.
And so what did you eventually grow General Automotive Alliance to? So you were merging companies. How many companies did you merge at its peak?
Oh, my God. We probably had 12 or 13 different companies. That has shrank over the years. Okay. But one time we had 12 or 13. The latest saga is very simple. I sold the largest company 4 years ago. I call it harvesting. I took all that money and set myself up for life, set up some of my employees for life, and I think I've got my daughter in a good place for life. So then I decided that we needed, we had management that had been with me 40 years. Sylvester Hester. He ran his leg. And now I see a different world where the challenges are greater. So I went to a man from Tennessee State who had walked into McDonald's. I had walked into General Motors when he was 21 years of age. From Tennessee State, first generation in college. He became president and CEO of General Motors of Mexico. Became president and CEO of General Motors of Canada. And at 51, he walked out. Said, I'm through.
Mm-hmm.
I stayed in touch with him. Talked to him all the time. I went to him with a deal. Hey, Kevin, we got a pretty good little company here. I sold off one of the biggest companies, but the bones are good. Sylvester's done a great job. He's going to go now and do his own little thing. Why don't you come over here and be CEO of the company? I don't think I want to do this. Kevin, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Mm. You don't need it. I don't need it. Your daughters need it. My daughters need it. Black folks need it. He said, oh man, you're messing with me. I gave him 30% of the company. Mm-hmm. He became CEO and a major shareholder. My advisor says, Pick, why'd you do that? I said, I'm betting on the horse, but I got a better jockey. The horse I built, but the jockey, I can't be the jockey no more.
Right.
The world has changed on me. 2 years later, they said, Pick, you call one of the best shots we ever called. We're on the verge of a major multi-million-dollar deal because of him.
And what did your at peak sales? What did GAA get to?
650, 640 when I sold Vitec, and that's an interesting story. Vitec was one of the first companies in America to make plastic fuel tanks. Mm-hmm. Plastic fuel tanks. I sold the company 4 years ago to a German company. And what's happening to plastic fuel tanks now?
Going away because of electric vehicles.
I mean,
right.
Was it God? Yeah. It wasn't me.
It goes back to that timing.
Yeah, timing, man. And God will order your steps. Now, I ain't no engineer. I've been reading about electrification for years, but I ain't that good.
Right.
And these are Germans.
Right.
They're some of the smartest people on earth. He walked in.
GM said their whole lineup is going all electric in the next 5 or 10 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got up to 650 million. You're betting on the right talent. Mm-hmm. How do you, and you've mentioned first generation college and finding people who still have that hunger. Mm-hmm. How do you identify talent?
Again, whether it's a person for McDonald's or whether it's a person for Automotive, I ask myself, are they hungry? Are they hungry? Example, no disrespect to my daughter. My daughter is a lawyer. She's not in business. She's hungry, but she ain't real hungry. Mm-hmm. She ain't real hungry. She will probably wind up in the business one day, but that is not her passion. She's going to be a great lawyer. But I want somebody who's hungry. I want somebody to say, I asked my cousin one day, unfortunately he plays Q. I said, Justin, when you got ready to play Q, where'd you get the money from? I knew he couldn't call home and ask his mom or daddy for the money. He said, well, my sister had a husband who had died, and she gave me his car. It was paid for. I got a title loan, and I took the money and pledged Q. When I pledged Alpha, I didn't write home as my mom and daddy sent me $250. I wasn't crazy, mm-hmm. I washed cars, but I didn't wash cars on campus. I washed cars another city over because I didn't want people to know what I was doing. But I washed cars.
It's hard, and it's hard to teach that hustle.
Yeah.
Because I struggle now. Right now I'm battling with good is the enemy of great, and what I'm trying to instill in my children is the hunger and the hustle that I had. I used to take the Greyhound bus down from Cleveland to the AUC when I was in 9th grade and 11th grade, and you can't walk onto a Morehouse campus or AUC campus and not immediately get hit with the hustle. So I learned all types of lessons from Otis the Third and others who were already there ahead of me. And I got to campus my freshman year, and the first thing I did was go buy $50 worth of Krispy Kreme donuts at 25 cents a donut, and then come back and sell it at 50 cents a donut.
Yeah.
You know,
that's it. And that's the concept.
Right. And then I bought vending machines and put them on in the dorms, and I started during Thanksgiving. I started a shuttle service to the airport for students wanting to go home, and so
Uber.
It's hard to get that hustle and teach it to someone else, especially if their parents have been well-to-do and you're trying to instill that in your children.
But there's a model here. The Jewish community. No matter how much, that next generation still comes out hungry. I don't know how they do it. I think a lot of it is a synagogue. I think a lot of it is the Hebrew schools, and a lot of it is a culture. So we, as an example, you might have saw on TV the other night, a young man in Oklahoma was talking about Tulsa, and he was in high school, and the teacher was talking about Tulsa used to be a big black community.
Right.
He said, "No, I lived there all my life. I went to school there. I never heard about it. It wasn't taught."
Right.
But see, I tell black folks, I don't want the school system teaching my daughter everything about black history. I want to do some of that. I know what Nat Turner was. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't deranged. He had freedom on his mind. And so we have to take a greater responsibility to teach our families about the history of our business and the history of our families. My great-grandfather, bought a farm that still is in the family in 1877. But my fear is that my 92-year-old uncle would die, and it would disappear, not on my watch because I will pay the taxes, but there's no one in my family other than me that can pay the taxes on that property. Not because they're bad people, they just don't have the vision,
And one of the things, again, why I really wanted you on the podcast is because of your commitment to giving back, that service orientation, and in particular to young black people. You've never been afraid to share your knowledge or to lend an ear. Talk to me about the importance of reinvesting in that next generation, as you just mentioned.
Well, again, mine was, I had a grandfather and a community in LaGrange and a community. In Flint, I had examples, though. I know what the number of men did. I know they financed the businesses. I know they paid for kids to go to college, not formally, but informally. One of the things I always ask my students is that it's 1955, Detroit, Michigan. Young man just graduated from the Howard Dental School. He come back to Detroit, open up his practice. He went to Hartford Baptist Church as a kid. And now the church is excited. His son come home from Howard. He's going to be a dentist. He's going to put his office up here on Woodward and 6 Mile, He needs $5,000 for his office, equipment, train his people. He needs $5,000. It's 1955. Where is he going to get $5,000 in 1955? Dr. Pickard, you're going to go to the bank. Please. You go to the bank and get embarrassed, get disappointed. The father would usually go to the preacher and they talk about it. And church might kick in something. Then he might say, well, you might want to go see blank blank. And you go see the numbers man. Numbers man, okay, I can help you out. I can do this. That's how we went in business in 1955, 56. The banks would not loan money to us. But now to buy a 55 Buick, no problem.
Right.
To buy a 55 Chevy, no problem.
Depreciating assets.
So we got to look at these things that we've been able to do with little or nothing. We now have a banking system. There are banks that will now loan money to that new graduate of the Morehouse Medical School who needs $20,000 to open up her practice. So I hope and pray that through my little efforts in my books, and I have 2 books coming out. One is entitled Millionaire Moves Beyond the Pandemic. And it talks about how you pivot and how you survive in a new world, pandemic. And the other book is entitled 100 Outstanding African-American Business Success Stories, 1850 to 1950. 1850 to 1950. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not throwing shade, but black college has been in existence over 100 years. Is there one black college in America today that has a course entitled The History of Black Business in America?
That's a good question. I'm guessing it does not.
I haven't found it.
Right. Well, you know what? I know you don't need my help, but I'll tell you what, when those 2 books come out, because your first book was so good and inspirational, and I See the Reason, Give Them the Business, going to purchase at least 100 of them so we can send out to our listeners and whatnot, because that wisdom is going to be greatly needed, and we appreciate you putting pen to paper. Before I let you go, what would you want to say to the up and coming entrepreneur who's getting ready to decide between that steady paycheck and that risk that he's thinking about taking on? What would you say?
I would say plan well, plan carefully, read. You don't have to do it all in one day. There is a concept called 2-arm living. We talk about the side hustle today. There's nothing wrong with starting out trying to see how to make this thing work. And I will say this, I say it all the time. There's an African proverb that I love. It says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with a team. I believe in teams. I talk about my posse in my book. I'm not a smart guy, but some of my guys in my posse are smart as heck. And I believe in teams. I believe in working together, and I believe in sharing the blessings you get. So I hope and pray we must produce more business people who can produce major business that can employ our people. Now, I'm not opposed to the guys and ladies who got 3 or 4 employees and they're doing well and they're riding around in their Lexus and all that. I ain't mad at you. But I want some people to produce 4 and 5 and 700 jobs. We got to employ our people. And we do that primarily through having our own industries. Now, I hire white. I got white people working for us. We don't just hire black people. If you're an engineer and you can help us get this part out cheaper, come on, talk to me. But we are intentional about the fact that we have to hire black people also. But I ain't hiring poo-poo that can't help me deliver the product to the customer. But I will give him a chance to come in the door. And if he does what he's supposed to do, we'll have an outstanding person one day. So it is a process. It's a process. But it's not rocket science. No disrespect to white people. They're not all smart. They don't have any magic formula. this is hard work then. First it's hard work, no doubt about it. Then all these other things, relationships, timing. But it's hard work. And there's nothing nobody on your podcast listening to us cannot do. I have a very simple saying, and I'll close with this. The world is not fair, but God is. The world is not fair, but God is. And secondly, because I'm from LaGrange, Georgia, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that anybody from anywhere can accomplish anything if they put the work in. If they put the work in. That's Drake, not Bill Pickard.
Well, we appreciate the hip hop reference. We appreciate you taking the time. Dr. Pickard, thank you for giving them the business. Great job, man.
Jordan.